All right. Welcome, everyone. A good afternoon, good morning, and good evening if you're joining us from abroad. My name is Allison Herbert. I am the Product Coffee librarian for Product Coffee Book Club. And we're really excited to be kicking off our winter 2025 reading selection with our authors, Bruce McCarthy and Melissa Pell. They are with us today to talk about Aligned, which is a lovely book on stakeholder management for product leaders. Before we get into questions with Bruce and Melissa, I want to set the stage with what is Product Coffee Book Club if you've not been there. Product Coffee is a community, a virtual community based out of Atlanta, Georgia, global audience of product professionals. And part of our community is interested in reading. And so in 2022, I believe, or 2023, we formed a group of folks that met at a regular cadence to talk about books that are frequently on our to be read list. Sometimes we don't have time as product leaders to read. And so we began the practice of reading together. And so that gives us some accountability. If you're going to read a book, you should have somebody to talk to about it. I know I personally read better if I get to talk about what I read, comprehension, and being able to apply some of those conversations. And so the book club itself meets virtually, weekly or bi-weekly, depending on the cadence of the book. It's for anybody in the product space. You may not be a product manager. Yeah. Oh, great. Thanks, Jason, for mentioning that. We do, if you're watching us, want you to chime in and say hello and give us an idea of where you're joining us from. Thank you. Hello, Jerry. Happy to see you. Hey, Mary. I'll jump back into the product book club information. We meet weekly. We talk about the book. We have a conversation. We have healthy banter. Sometimes we'll have specific exercises that we'll do within the book if there's something teachable there. So we certainly want to encourage you to join, even if you're not going to read the book, but you're curious. We'd love to see you there. Let's see. I would usually use this time to pick on my friend Manesh, who helps us with the book club as well. But Mary and Jerry might be able to chime in here. If I can't read the assigned selection before the discussion, what do you do? Let's see if they'll come back and give us a response here. I'm pausing. Let's see.
I think my answer would be, if you can't get the reading done before the live session, is to come to the live session and find out what's so great about the reading you were supposed to do so you're motivated to read it.
You got it. That's the correct answer. You don't avoid going if you haven't been able to read. And that's the important part. So we want to be thinking through, like, okay, our lives are busy, our meetings are, our work weeks are busy. We've got parents and responsibilities, but the opportunity to come together and read is important. So there are no wrong answers. We want to see you at book club so you can join us. And I'll just speak a bit about how it's helped me in my career. Product Coffee Book Club gives me a place and space to talk to other product managers. I have a team at my company that I can talk to, but it's always interesting to see how people are doing product in the wild. I know Bruce and Melissa know about doing product in the wild. We'll hear about that in a minute, but just thinking through, like, what skills do you think you need to build on? What's something that you're curious on how other companies might do stuff? We find those conversations happening frequently in book club and product coffee in general. So we'll welcome that. All right. We've got a few folks watching us. Hello, Lakita, and hello, Quentin. Thank you for joining us. We'll get started. So Bruce and Melissa, welcome.
Thank you.
I'll give you a moment and let you tell me about Aligned. Who wants to give us the spiel on the book?
Melissa, you want to go?
Sure. Bruce and I have different but complementary reasons for wanting to write this book. So I'll tell you about mine. I was a director of product management, and various people on my team had various things they needed to get better at with stakeholder management. And I originally thought about writing a book on saying no to stakeholders. Because I had somebody on my team who always said no, but never gave a reason. And somebody on my team who always said yes. And even though he knew he would disappoint them in the end. So there was something wrong with both of those ends of the spectrum. I went to Bruce and I'm like, I know somebody who's written a product book. Let me get his feedback. And he said, I think it could be more than just saying no. I think there's a lot more to stakeholder management. So that's when we started kind of fleshing out what all the topics were that we wanted to talk about in this book. And we looked for a book and it didn't exist. Like I wanted to buy a book to give to the people on my team and I couldn't find one.
So you wrote one.
So I wrote one.
Well, we wrote one.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why it resonated with me. There were two reasons. One was Melissa wrote a really good sample chapter on saying no. And that chapter, not in exactly the same form, but pretty close, is to be found in the completed book. But the other reason was it crystallized in my head what was going on in many workshops and talks and coaching situations that I've found myself in as a product coach for many years. And that is, most of the questions that I seem to get are about how do I deal with the people on my team and in my company who are difficult. You know, we cover the formal material on like how to do a roadmap or how to prioritize things or do proper discovery and all of these great, very concrete product management skills. And then all the questions are about, yeah, but I have this one stakeholder who will not cooperate, or yeah, but my company just doesn't think this way. And how do I persuade them that there is a better way? There were lots of these kinds of questions. And in one particular road mapping workshop where the question came up, how do I get people to buy into this method of road mapping? I started sharing some tips and techniques and insights that I'd had over time about getting alignment with people on different ways of doing things. And the person stopped me and said, this is the workshop we need. There's nothing, this is the hardest part of my job, is getting people to go along with the plan. And yet there's no resources. Like Melissa said, we looked and there were no books on this topic. I thought about it and I realized that putting myself back in my shoes as a first-time product manager, all of my mistakes were stakeholder management mistakes. They were all about not getting the team on board with my product. Even if I had product market fit, I didn't necessarily have product organization fit. And I needed to work just as hard to find that as to find fit with the customer. So when Melissa came to me, I think my brain was primed to say, yes, this is the book we need because everybody needs it and there isn't one.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys both echoed how I felt about this book. Is why isn't there a book or a conversation or a wider place of practice for this? And I can't think of a better set of folks to write this. I know, Bruce, you're a 2-time book club author for us, and we had some great success with the product roadmaps conversation, but I really enjoy this format. And I really think the conversation and approach you've taken to this hits home. I read that first chapter and I was like, are they in my meetings? Because it literally, I literally think you were sitting next to me as these conversations were happening. And right, we've all had, I've had a stakeholder that I don't know how to say no to, or it just says whatever, and the types. But right, you literally painted such a vivid picture of that experience. And I think
we've heard from people. You gave me a little PTSD reading this book. Like, this is exactly who I've been dealing with, which is a big compliment, but also, you know, it's great that we were able to kind of capture people's actual experiences.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Also, go ahead, Bruce.
Everybody has a sparks in their life.
Yes. And I'd also say we often feel like as product folks, we're on an island and our problems are unique, right? Our business is unique, our problems are unique. That meeting and an entire scenario you painted tells us we're all the same. It's just slightly different. The names and actors have been changed to, describe the sentiment.
To protect the innocent?
Yeah, or out them, one of the two. Yep, that's fair. All right, so we've got some questions in the chat. I'm happy to go there next, but let's see. Yeah. I think I heard about the inspiration. Mary just had a question. I'm just trying to see if I can pull that back forward to see if I can get that. Yeah, so my consulting and coaching clients very often focus on the tech and product mechanics and sometimes forget the part. Your superpower is the collaborative culture you develop. She gave us a page 262. Thank you, Mary. That's a very good Product Coffee Book Club nod, giving us that page shout out there. Any thoughts around that sentiment and thinking about that superpower and collaborative nature that you guys really try to embody with the book?
I think a lot of people do forget that part. I've spoken with folks on my teams and on other teams who are like, I'm checking all the boxes. Why am I not getting promoted? I don't understand. It's like, if you deliver the feature, but like everybody is super upset with you at the end, you're not really being successful in all of the ways that you could be. And you probably missed something that would have made it even more successful had you spoken with some of the other people on your team. So people want a team player. They don't want people they like have to deal with. And so if you're just checking the boxes, you're doing the roadmap, you're doing all the things, but you're not building those relationships with people, and you're not getting to know people, and you're not building trust, and you're not like building your internal network, you might not get that promotion because people think of you as either a troublemaker or whatever it is, because you're not building those relationships.
Yeah, that's great.
On top of that, I would say that there is a sort of a team culture aspect to this. It's Melissa highlighted the one-to-one part, and that's right. But when you scale that up to everybody on the team, also, what you're doing is you're creating an atmosphere that is collaborative, that is much more likely to get a result that is more than the sum of the parts. It isn't just that marketing did their job, sales did their job, engineering did their job. It's that we all worked together to produce something that was bigger than any of us could have done individually. And that I think about, for example, Netflix was famous for putting out their culture deck about how they felt that it wasn't their technology or their product or even the individual members of their current team that made us competitive difference for them. It was the culture as a whole of high performance and collaboration and openness that was what would drive their success over time through successive generations of technology and individual team members.
Yeah. Okay. You hit a couple things, and we could probably talk for hours on this, but I know we're time bound here. I'm going to double click a little bit on those stakeholders and thinking about, you wrote this for our product folks that need some support in this space, but would you recommend anybody else on those collaborative teams or cross-functional teams to read this? I know we've got some interest, I think, when we were talking about it in an earlier conversation, for teams to read this. And is there benefit there, or do you think they're going to be offended because we've called them out and called them evil stakeholders?
Well, I don't think we've called them evil stakeholders. We sort of did that in the first draft of the book, and we got called out on it by our very lovely early readers club, of which Jerry was a part. He's on this call. And we realized that we sort of were playing the us versus them style, and we didn't want to do that because, it was a little joking way, but in all seriousness, the idea is that everybody's part of the same team. So we built up these characters in the book, but nobody's sort of right versus wrong. It's just that we're trying to work on working together.
Yeah, work on working together.
On a very practical level, I think that there are some specific frameworks in the book that it would be good to sit down and go over with your stakeholders to agree on. There's a whole decision-making framework called the DAISY model that we describe, that they use in the book. And in it, each person who's even tangentially involved in a decision plays a role. It's like a RACI model, but for specific to decisions. And so you could sit down with your stakeholders and say, I think on these things, I have the D, and I think on these other things, you have the D, the decision authority. Do we agree on that? And just being really explicit about, sure, each of us is going to consult the other, but who in the end owns which decisions could be extremely powerful in terms of just reducing the amount of argument and noise in the business. Just as an example, there are a bunch of frameworks like that are essentially mapping out your stakeholder landscape, that you could do it by yourself with your pen and a spreadsheet. And the stakeholder canvas that we provide in the book, but it would be much more powerful if you actually did it collaboratively with your stakeholders.
That's a great call out. And you're 100% right on the sense of, especially right in technology and product, right? We're very familiar with Agile and bringing folks along that cross-functional relationship. When we step outside into the business units, organization, however you're structured, it's almost speaking a different language to them sometimes because they just don't operate that way. They've asked for a thing and they want it, and they don't understand why you haven't given them that thing. And so building that bridge of communication of here's what I need in order to do that, and here's how that's going to affect you, and here's how we're going to need to talk to our customers about this or our users or whatever it might be. And I know I'm getting a little into communication there, but I think, right, it's that same thing, that collaboration is communication, which brings us all along. Yeah.
That's right.
All right. I'm going to pepper the crowd for a question that I know you wanted to get after, Bruce, and then we'll come back to it and see what we can do to get some answers from the audience today. So the question is, what's the worst advice you've heard regarding stakeholder management? We'll encourage folks that are joined on LinkedIn to pop an answer into the chat and share a story, and then we'll try and call on you as we get those responses in. So, Bruce.
I'll volunteer one that I heard.
Yes.
So in this great book called Creativity, Inc., about the founding and growth of Pixar, written by their former CEO, he describes interactions with Steve Jobs, who famously bought the company and was CEO for some time, eventually handing over the CEO duties to Ed Catmull, who wrote the book. He described the early days with Steve, when maybe he hadn't really quite learned how to manage stakeholders as well as he eventually did. And he asked Steve, okay, so if you're officially the CEO, but I'm running the company, what do we do if we disagree? And Steve's answer was, I will just keep explaining my point of view until you agree. And that is the worst stakeholder management advice I can think of. Stakeholder management is not just convincing the other people by continuously peppering them with your opinion and all your reasons why, and all your data and all your spreadsheets and so on. It is actually the opposite. It is shutting up and listening to them about what's important to them and getting in their head and understanding their point of view. So that when you do say something, you're speaking their language and you're talking to them about their interests and why it is actually advantageous to them as well as you that you cooperate and collaborate on this thing. It's actually the same skill set we use, or at least we're supposed to use, when we're interviewing customers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see some similarities there. And right, I'm guilty as charged in some situations. We get very passionate about our product work that we forget to look up and look over and say, wait, this is who needs it the most. And how do they value and view that from their perspective and their place in the organization? So that's awesome. All right. We've not had any takers on the question yet. So I'll pause. Melissa, do you have an example, maybe? Worst advice?
I don't know about worst advice, but I would say the default mode that I see a lot of people in is simply going and asking the stakeholders for a list of features that they want and putting them in a list and putting them in order and doing those. Yeah. And maybe without talking directly to customers.
No, I know. We should take that list and we should get all the executives to vote on the things.
Yeah,
we should just vote.
And then we'll do the most popular ones, or whichever one the CEO wants usually. But what we argue for in the book is, yes, you should collaborate with your stakeholders, but that doesn't mean just taking what they want and putting them in order. It's working with them on what the goals are. And that can often be a much better way to decide what we should work on or not than a vote of the executives, which is, hey, we're trying to reduce churn, or we're trying to drive growth, or we're trying to increase margin, or whatever it is that the team is aligned on as the metrics that we want to go after, and use that as a way to filter all the things that are coming in, or even better, think sort of strategically about, hey, now that we have this goal, let's start here and figure out what we should do, versus let's take all the stuff coming in and figure out how we can slot it into our goal.
Yeah, that's a great
Starting
call
with the
out.
goals, I think, is the most important thing you can do. You need to understand all the stakeholders' goals. You need to understand where they align and maybe where they don't, because sometimes you find out that somebody's bonus depends on something that is completely orthogonal to, or even opposing your particular product or feature or initiative or whatever it is. And you need that to be resolved as quickly as possible. Otherwise, you're going to be working at cross purposes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
So we've
like
got
this.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
like this. No, I was just saying, I like this question. How does this work with stakeholders that have conflicting interests?
Yes. We've never
I,
seen
I,
conflicting interest before at an organization ever.
yeah, you're gonna have that. You're gonna have stakeholders who don't agree with each other. There's a whole section in the book about workshopping, which is various methodologies for getting people in a room and talking through things. So that can help. I had this situation when I was at Wayfair working in supply chain, because the folks who wanted to reduce damage to products wanted the trucks loaded very carefully in a certain way and things not stacked too high so the things at the bottom wouldn't break. But the folks in transportation were incentivized. They pay the same amount whether the truck's full or empty. They wanted to cram as much stuff in there as possible. So I realized that I had these two stakeholder groups who were just never going to, like, their incentives were just drastically different. So I had to work with both teams to try to figure out, okay, what are some goals that we can align on? Right? We want to get things there not broken. So if you're measured on how many things you get there, let's measure you on how many things you get there that are not broken. And then we have kind of a metric that we can work with both teams to align together and work towards a common goal.
That can be hard if they work for, different parts of the organization, and it goes up several layers of hierarchy as different objectives, even all the way maybe up to the C-suite, where they have different and non-aligned objectives. Like Melissa, I worked with a team once where the QA team had bonuses tied to the number of bugs filed. And engineering had bonuses tied to shipping on time. So they kept closing everything that QA filed as a bug as not a bug, so they didn't have to deal with it, so they could ship on time. And the
It's not a bad
product team,
strategy.
the product management team had yet another goal, which was to ship the maximum number of features in each release, which fought against those other two, right? So the antidote for that was to all come to the table together and be really open about what the metrics of success that you're being measured by are. I don't need to know exactly what your bonus is, but I need to know how you're being measured, and you need to know how I'm being measured, so we can identify situations where they are working at cross purposes, where they are not aligned. And either that's not really a conflict, but we can just acknowledge it and we can find a compromise, like Melissa said. Or if we can't, we need to actually go up the chain in the organization and say to whoever is deciding ultimately what these metrics of success are, hey, you're putting us in a bad position here. We cannot compromise without one of us
Losing or
being
not getting.
penalized, right? So we need to fix this.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, right, alignment, not agreement. And right, maybe it's an agreement about how we'll get there together rather than you're going to get there and I'm not going to get there, vice versa. That maybe helped you guys figure out the title for the book.
What's the worst thing in the world is where you're not quite sure what somebody else's motivations are, and they're making arguments that don't quite make sense, but you can't put your finger on why. And every time you try to press on it, they seem to deflect. Well, probably there is some hidden motivation there that you don't know about. There's almost always something about the context that you don't know. So get curious, ask questions. Maybe they will tell you, well, actually, I'm working toward this number for my boss, and that's making it difficult for me.
Yeah.
And it may not be that they don't want to tell you. It may be that they don't realize it's relevant.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot going on. You're absolutely right there. All right. Well, we are almost up on time. I want to be respectful of everybody's lunch hour. Let's play the fast forward game. We've read this book. We've talked about it. What's one thing that you think we'll be able to take away or maybe directly apply from reading this book or discussing the book with the group?
For me, it is explicitly having a part of your mind and your week dedicated to making sure that your stakeholders, that is the way Melissa said it, your whole team, not just your squad of engineers and maybe a designer and a data scientist, but the marketing team, the sales team, the finance team, the support team, that extended network that you depend on. Spend some explicit time thinking about whether they are aligned to what you're doing, and whether you're maintaining those relationships and you're understanding the effect of your decisions on them and vice versa, so that you maintain that alignment. We have a tool we call the stakeholder canvas for doing that work, for keeping track of the people and what they need and what you need from them. And you can go to alignedthebook.com actually and download it for free, even if you haven't got the book. It's in PDF form and also in Miro and in a spreadsheet. So you can use your favorite platform.
Okay. Awesome.
I think for me, it's in every interaction you have with your stakeholders, keeping an open mind and being curious and realizing that there's probably some stuff you haven't asked or don't know about. And if somebody's behavior is confusing to you, there's probably a reason behind it. There's probably something you don't know. And so asking people questions, which also, builds trust, build relationships, in addition to giving you valuable insights into what's going on and how you can drive more success.
Yeah. We all know a Sparks, as you said earlier. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
you can diffuse the spark situation, I think. I was talking to this executive team, and the product team was repeatedly inside and outside the meeting complaining about sales, always trying to inject things into the roadmap that seemed specific to a deal. And it came up during this executive team meeting where all of the executives from all the functions were together. And I said, look, guys, I'm sympathetic. I'm a product person. I've experienced this, but let's think about this from the salesperson's point of view. What's their job? Close deals. What do we pay them for? Close deals.
Yes.
We should not blame them. It's perfectly understandable that they want to do everything possible to do their job successfully. We pay them for that because we need that as a company. So rather than just fight them in all of this, let's find common ground.
It's a great example there. And right, I'll give Jerry one more shout out. He'll love this, but listen to learn, I think, is what you're both saying there in terms of right. If there's multiple things going on, what do you need to learn about how those folks need information, communication, coordination to help deliver towards a goal? Okay.
Well said, Jerry.
Shameless plug, you saw it just go by. So productcoffee.com/book club will get you to how to sign up for our next discussion, which will be our first reading discussion of this book. It's next Friday at 2 Eastern. So if you haven't already and you've been here just to listen and learn about, we encourage you to go there. It's got a couple of other questions about what is book club. You've heard maybe at the beginning of the talk here, I gave you an overview. You'll also get emails each week that talk through things like what we've been talking about here, links to that stakeholder canvas, other resources as we've got a conversation going on. For my folks that are familiar with book club, you'll get an email later this week telling you the reading assignment, but you heard it here first. Chapter 1 is your homework assignment. So we'll dig into chapter 1 in our first discussion. And we really look forward to bringing you both back at the end of the book to, and certainly engage you with the conversation in our premium community, but love to tell you what we think about the book, love to tell you what we found helpful, what we learned. Maybe we'll solve all the problems by reading the book together.
I'm on the Product Coffee Slack, so shoot me a question if you have one as you're going through the book.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. And Melissa will get you in there as well and,
Yep.
and welcome you to the community.
Thank
Thanks
you.
everyone today for being with us. And we really appreciate your time and would love to see you in our Product Coffee Book Club community. You do not need to be a premium member to join. Book Club is for everyone. So if you go to that productcoffee.com/book club, you'll get the meeting invites. We'll collaborate together in Miro and lead the discussion there. And then you'll have an opportunity to learn more. All right. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you so much, Bruce and Melissa, for joining us. We look
Thank
forward to
you.
reading. Bye.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.